Hey everybody, how's it going? Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com along with good old JM Jeff Meacham. How you doing today, Jeff?
Doing very well. Looking forward to this topic today. It's a fun topic for me.
Yes, today we are going to be discussing the greatest Intercontinental Champions, or as I like to put it, the IC Champions for short, in the history of WWE. And when it comes down to the IC title, you have to talk about the very first champion who won it in that tournament, that epic tournament in Rio de Janeiro. Of course, I'm talking about the great Pat Patterson.
So, are you saying that if we go to the Olympics next year in Rio, we can go see where Pat won the championship?
Exactly.
We can go see where Buddy Rogers won the WWF championship?
Yeah, they have this.
Oh my God!
They have this huge hallway with all the pictures and various merchandise from the time and flyers and all that good stuff.
You know, it's almost as if Vince McMahon wants to really believe it. Isn't that great? But no, Pat was a great Intercontinental champion. He set the tone. He did. He was a tremendous champion. He was a great good guy. He was a great bad guy also when he started as champion. So, you know, he was the one that really established what the Intercontinental Championship was supposed to be.
And he was a credible star.
He was.
So he instantly made the title credible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, sometimes the title makes the man, but in this case with the first champion, the man made the title.
Exactly. So he was a good pick for the first champion.
He was.
Of the early IC champions, I think you definitely have to mention Pedro Morales, who was champion for a combined total of 619 days between his reigns as champion.
And he was the first person in history to win all three of the original major championships. He was the first ever Triple Crown champion. Yeah. By becoming a Intercontinental champion, he won that right.
Right.
He established himself as a credible Intercontinental champion. His second reign lasted well over a year. He had an awesome feud with Muraco, the championship, the magnificent Don Muraco, who was also on my list. Pedro could go. You know, he was the Latino superstar before Eddie Guerrero was the Latino superstar. He set the tone for every Latin American superstar that would come along in the future.
Absolutely.
And he was a great Intercontinental champion, no question about that.
Yeah, just a tremendous baby face. People loved the guy.
People loved him. They would flock to the Garden more often to see him than to see like Bob Backlund or people like that. You know, it was just, you know, he came along when he was first WWF champion when Bruno was on his hiatus as his champion, and the people would come to see him, and they took that and they put that into his reigns as Intercontinental champion. Okay, we still got Pedro. Look, he has a belt. Look, he's still here.
Yeah,
and it worked.
And you mentioned Don Muraco. Don Muraco had a combined total of 541 days as champion, and you know he had a lot of classic matches, including that match in Madison Square Garden with Jimmy Snuka, the cage match that Mick Foley was there in person that inspired him to become a WWE superstar. Don Muraco was, you know, the opposite. Pedro was a great babyface champion. Don Muraco was one of the best heels of his era.
It was so funny when they turned Muraco babyface in the mid '80s, around the time of WrestleMania 4, I believe it was, or just before that. It didn't work because Muraco was such a great bad guy, with Fuji as his manager, and then before that, I think the Wizard was his manager before Fuji. I'm not exactly sure. It's been a long time, but Muraco was a great Intercontinental champion, and he could pack houses. He had snuck a pack the Garden.
Yeah, and you wanted to see people beat him so badly.
You did.
And he would use every tactic in the book to hold on to that title, and he had Mr. Fuji, and you know, he would always somehow manage to retain the title by the skin of his teeth.
Mick Foley hitchhiked from Cortland, New York to Madison Square Garden to see Snuka beat this guy up. Okay? Yeah. That's how credible he was as a bad guy.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned Pedro Morales, and you know, Tito Santana came in and basically stepped in and was the new babyface champion, and he had a combined 443 days as champion.
Yeah, his feuds with Muraco were great. His feuds with another guys on my list, Greg the Hammer Valentine, were great. Tito, I don't think gets near enough credit for how good he really was. Yeah. Because by the time you and I were growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, he was like a jobber to the stars by then.
Yeah, pretty much.
But before we were born, even as you're a little older than me, but not too much. The early '80s, he was a great tag champion and an awesome Intercontinental champion also.
Absolutely. And the guy that beat him, in my opinion, my personal favorite IC champion, the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Absolutely. Randy Savage was a great Intercontinental champion. He really took that championship and went in an era where Hulk Hogan was main eventing or even doing the middle part of the show as the WWF champion. Randy took the Intercontinental title and just elevated it way up here someplace.
Yeah. He made the IC title division almost as important as the world title division to a lot of people.
He's the one that made that belt the workhorse belt.
Exactly.
He's the one that did that. Randy Savage did that. And you watch his DVDs, the early part of the Macho Madness DVD is all about the Intercontinental Championship and establishing himself as a superstar, but it really established the championship as well.
Yeah, and then of course the match at WrestleMania 3, one of the all-time great Intercontinental, probably the greatest Intercontinental title match of all time. I mean, arguably. Many people would say that that's their all-time favorite, and that's really, a historic match in so many ways.
Ricky Steamboat, and unfortunately Steamboat's reign didn't translate to being very memorable because he lost it within 3 months.
Yeah.
But Steamboat, if he'd have held on and been champion, he could have been a great champion too.
Yeah, but the person that beat Steamboat for the title, the so-called greatest Intercontinental champion of all time, the Honky Tonk Man.
Oh, Honky Tonk, and we go back. You and I go way back with Honky as far as trying to get him on our shows or trying to get him to come on and him and his webmaster. But you know what? Honky came along, and again, in the era where Hogan was champion and Savage was world champion, Honky was the Intercontinental Championship heel, bad guy, just the snake in the grass that would do anything he could to hang on to the championship. The difference was Savage was a workhorse, whereas Honky just kind of coasted.
Yeah, but I mean, he was an entertaining heel, but you just didn't get the quality matches with him as champion. It was more about just seeing somebody beat him up, and eventually somebody did, and that person was the Ultimate Warrior who would have 2 very decent length runs as champion.
Yes.
He lost to Rick Rude, and then he won it back. And then he ended up not losing the title the second time. It was forfeited because he beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. So the Intercontinental Champion beat the WWE Champion at WrestleMania.
Clean. That
made the title epic.
As critical as we've been of Warrior over the years, especially me, his defeating Hogan for the championship really just popped the title.
Yeah.
And it made it so important that in my opinion, greatest Intercontinental champion of all time, Mr. Perfect, wanted to be champion. And he won the tournament. He beat Tito in the final. He took on Bobby Heenan as his manager, and the rest is history. The perfect manager for the perfect wrestler, Curt Hennig. Curt Hennig was my IC champion. He was the one that I grew up watching. And when I first started watching wrestling in late 1990, he was the champ. Actually, when I first started watching, the Tornado was champion.
Yeah.
Kerry Von Erich. But once Perfect got it back, he and Bret Hart had that match at SummerSlam the following year. But Perfect was just the best Intercontinental champion I ever saw up until the guy on my list later.
It was just fitting. Him and that belt just were a perfect match.
They were it sounds cliche and corny, but nobody beat Mr. Perfect. Nobody.
And one person did beat him though.
Bret Hart.
Bret Hart. Mr. Perfect got excellently executed by Bret Hart at SummerSlam. Another one of the all-time great IC title matches, SummerSlam '91.
That was the first SummerSlam. The first pay-per-view I saw the entire way through the whole show, and seeing that match. And then that was the first ever Coliseum video I got. I would go back and watch that match over and rewind and over again.
Yeah.
In the time where you couldn't just go skip on your DVD menu, kids. It didn't exist back then, okay? Coliseum video, you had to rewind that shit back and forth 100 times. But I wore my tape out, but it was worth it.
Yeah, so Bret kicked butt. And he was a great champion.
Yes.
He was 2-time champion. He won it the second time at WrestleMania 8 one of my favorite WrestleMania matches, one of my matches that I feel was the most underrated.
Yes.
Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper, WrestleMania 8. Bret winning it for the second time.
Roddy Piper's only WWF championship for many, many years.
Yeah, and he did not put over people clean.
He didn't, but he did for Bret.
And so that was a very historic match. And then the next major champion I want to mention is the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, who beat the British Bulldog. And speaking of Bret Hart as IC champion, real quick, mention the match at SummerSlam.
Yes.
92, Bret Hart versus the Bulldog.
The main event.
The main event.
In an era where you had Savage and Warrior on the undercard as the WWF Championship match. You had Bret and Bulldog going however long they went. An emotional family feud match.
Yeah.
It was just great.
Yeah, so when people say, we complain about the IC title today and how it's been so watered down and people don't really understand, you have to look back at this era when the IC title was in the main event and the IC champion was beating the WWE champion.
Those you spending the $10 or whatever it is, $9.99 a month on the network, go back and watch some of the old pay-per-views from like 85 version of the pay-per-views till about 94, 95. You'll see some great Intercontinental champions. You mentioned Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels took that championship and ran like hell.
Absolutely.
For years. He was a solid Intercontinental champion off and on for almost 4 years before he got the big championship.
Exactly.
And he beat Marty Jannetty. He beat, the British Bulldog. He beat, he beat Bret off, in rematches. He beat everybody.
Yeah. And he went toe-to-toe with the bad guy, Razor Ramon, and another historic match, WrestleMania 10, the ladder match, Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels.
Were you've been in California your whole life, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I had this memory, I don't know why. When Michaels did the dive off the ladder, the big splash.
Yeah.
I had this memory of an aftershock from the Northridge earthquake.
Yeah, that happened.
That happened during the earthquake. I wasn't.
There was it happened during Bret and Owen.
During Bret and Owen. Okay,
for those of you who live in Southern California, remember the Northridge earthquake in January '94. Yeah, there was an aftershock during the first match.
Okay.
It was a pretty big one too. But
it was. It shook the whole house.
Yeah, we're getting off topic here, but yeah, that was a great match.
The Intercontinental Championship, that made the Intercontinental Championship mean something.
Right.
In an era where it had been kind of once Michaels lost it with the whole suspension thing or whatever, it was like, okay, well, Razor's champion, but we no Razor.
Yeah. That
made Razor too.
Mm-hmm. So Razor went on to become a 4-time champion. And another person I want to mention here is Jeff Jarrett, who would hold the title 6 times. He won it for the first time at the '95 Rumble, and he would hold it on and off over the next 4 years. So he was a big part of the IC title picture.
Literally leaving the company and coming back and winning the title again. That's how good he was. People really crap on Jarrett in that time, in that era when he was Double J. But he was awesome. I'm sorry. He was a great heel Intercontinental champion. He made people want to go pay to watch him get beat up.
Yeah.
He's very much like Muraco back then.
Yeah.
Jarrett was awesome, and he needs more credit than he gets.
Exactly. And 2 guys that would go on to be 2 of the biggest stars in the history of WWE would go back and forth for the IC title. Both of them great IC champions. Triple H, he had it 5 times over the course of several years, and the other person, The Rock, who had a very lengthy reign as champion. He won it. He won it. He was
awarded it.
He won it early '97 against Triple H as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and then he would win it the second time and have it for almost a year, and then he would lose it to, sure enough, Triple H at SummerSlam '98. One of my all-time favorite matches, a match that made both of them bigger stars than they were before the match.
Another ladder match at the Garden.
Yeah, another classic ladder match. Both of them would go on to become top superstars, and they were battling for the IC title.
The Rock was champion within 3 months of that loss.
Yeah,
he was champion. Somebody you skipped over, if you don't mind me going back a few years. Goldust. Goldust was a great Intercontinental champion. He really played mind games with his opponents, especially with Razor Ramon, and I think that he helped in a time where the Intercontinental Championship was kind of not really seen as the championship, or not seen as a major playing field or area. Goldust was a Intercontinental champion that defended the championship and got it back when he lost it and held up matches or whatever. The only bad part about Goldust's reign was that he was Intercontinental champion when he got defeated by Roddy Piper.
Yeah,
that was a kind of a downgrade to the championship. But I think Goldust is a pretty solid champion.
Yeah, he was one of the most controversial champions.
Definitely.
And, had some memorable moments with him and Razor and him giving mouth-to-mouth to Ahmed Johnson, setting up that match at King of the Ring. So, yeah, there were some interesting storylines with him as IC champion.
Yes.
And moving on to the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era, I want to mention a few names here. First of all, we have to mention Chris Jericho. He has the record 9-time IC champion.
Yeah, I mentioned when we started that Mr. Perfect was my favorite Intercontinental champion of all time, but I am of the opinion that Chris Jericho is the true greatest holder of the Intercontinental Championship. He chased that championship when China was champion. He won it. He was decisive. He won the Undisputed Championship, Intercontinental Championship at the Rumble 2000 against China and Hardcore Holly, and he went on to be the greatest Intercontinental champion of his era.
And some amazing matches like the 2001 Royal Rumble match with Benoit.
I mentioned on Talk Wrestling either this week's or last week's, I forget which one it was, that those two had a unbelievable series of matches in 2000, 2001 over the Intercontinental Championship. Yeah. And really helped build the title back up.
Yeah, and another guy along with Edge, fellow Canadian Edge.
Yeah. Edge, I don't have Edge on my list. I'm surprised.
5-time champion.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't have him. Edge was the thing is, Edge, you always knew that Edge was going to be something bigger.
Yeah.
The Intercontinental Championship. But when he was champion, he made it important.
Yeah. And another guy I want to mention, your favorite wrestler. You know who I'm talking about.
RVD. 6-time that I remember, Intercontinental champion. It was said when he beat Cena that night at One Night Stand that he was the greatest wrestler to never hold a world title up to that point, and he was. He was not world champion yet, but he was a dominant Intercontinental champion. He was a great Intercontinental champion when he was champion, and them giving him the rub 6 times shows that.
Yeah, and some of the more recent names, Shelton Benjamin, 3-time champion. He actually held the title for 354 days total. So that for the modern era, that's pretty significant.
It really is, and
great matches with him. And Jeff Hardy, 4-time Intercontinental champion.
I was really surprised that Matt never won the Intercontinental Championship, but Jeff was a good champion. He beat Triple H.
Yeah.
So how can you argue that success? He beat Triple H for it. He beat Johnny Nitro for it. He beat Umaga for it. I forget who else was the 4th reign. I forget who that was. But
he went toe to toe with a lot of guys. And in recent years, Dolph Ziggler, 4-time champion, probably the best Intercontinental champion I think of the modern era.
I agree with that. You also have Bad News Barrett, who's a 5-time.
5 reigns, and he actually has held the title 397 days. Believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, you don't remember that because he either got hurt every time or he would lose it really quickly for stupid reasons. Yeah. But yeah, Bad News Barrett, King Barrett's a great Intercontinental champion, as is the Miz. People don't like to give Miz much credit, but Miz has been a solid Intercontinental champion over the course of his reigns.
Probably better as that champion than the WWE champion.
I always like Miz WWE champion. I like his reign. Maybe it's just me.
So, are there any other names you want to mention, or did we pretty much cover all the
I think we got everybody that you had. Yeah, I got everybody. I'm good.
All right, that's our thoughts on the greatest Intercontinental champions. Leave your comments on YouTube, youtube.com/NODQCAW. Let us know what you think about the greatest IC champions and the greatest IC title matches as well. If we didn't mention a match or two, let us know what you think. Leave your comments and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest in the world of wrestling. And thank you for being on, Jeff.
Thank you.
We will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.